You guys see the news coming out of Canberra? It's crazy. Take a read of this. Former ACT public servant who climbed into a colleague's bed and raped her will be eligible for parole just 4 days after sentencing. Haider Ali, 38, received a jail term of more than 2 years when he appeared in the ACT Supreme Court on Thursday. He was ordered to serve a non-parole period of 17 months, but with the sentence backdated to take into account the time on remand, he will be eligible for release from custody next Monday. This one, teenage boy who raped a sleeping friend at his Canberra home has avoided jail despite showing minimal insight into his offending and its impact on the victim. What about this? Rising sports star rapist dodges time in prison despite lack of remorse. A rising Canberra sports star who showed no remorse for the rape of a teenage girl has avoided time behind bars and inclusion on the child sex offender register. Did you hear about this? Andrew Ralston, former AFP employee, spared jail on Instagram child sex grooming charge. A former Australian Federal Police employee sent an 11-year-old girl a message on Instagram, including one saying, "I want to see your nude body." It also reminds me about this thing that happened. Former Comanchero boss, Peter Zadrovic, dodges time behind bars after naked shootout. And this, Canberra father walks free after nearly 9 months in custody over Moncrief kidnapping. A cowardly Canberra father who assaulted a man during an 8-hour torture session at Moncrief has walked free from court after spending nearly 9 months in custody. What about this? Gunpoint rapist granted parole. An armed rapist and child sex offender who has been branded a high risk of committing more sex crimes has been rubber stamped for release at a secret parole hearing. Justice David Mossop in 2017 jailed Hadara for more than 5 years with a 2-year, 8-month and 2-week non-parole period. Isn't the news coming out of Canberra just wild? And you know what all these rapists, pedophiles, torturers, kidnappers and groomers have in common? They're all people that the ACT Supreme Court Justice David Mossop thinks deserve less time in jail than war crimes whistleblower David McBride. Just in case it wasn't clear, Mossop, the judge presiding over David McBride's case, was also the judge or the appellate judge in every case I just mentioned. Isn't it amazing that Mossop is more vindictive towards David McBride, a veteran, a former lawyer, a man who nobody will dare allege as a risk to anyone, than he is to steroid-using, gun-toting, repeat-offending, pedophile rapist branded high risk of committing more sex crimes? In case you missed it, whistleblower David McBride has been sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in jail with 2 years and 3 months no parole for his sick, violent, perverted and self-satisfied crime of exposing war crimes and cover-ups of war crimes in Afghanistan. He is now officially the first Australian soldier to go to jail for their conduct in Afghanistan. Let that be a warning to all future potential whistleblowers next time you're frustrated about seeing government-sanctioned murders. Don't try and report it. Don't foolishly expect accountability. Do not go after the deep state and think you can win. Do not be induced by their doublespeak about transparency and accountability and honour. Instead, go out, grab a gun, shove it in someone's face and rape them. Let off some steam. You'll likely face lesser consequences and fuck your life up less than if you're in front of the American intelligence community's favourite judge, David Mossop. This judgment should be his albatross. If you make decisions entirely out of line with pretty much not just every legal expert who doesn't die in Australia's intelligence community every second week, but Australian public opinion in general, you should fully expect to feel the weight of that on you in your day-to-day life. After all, we are meant to be in a democracy, and it is very dangerous when our elite begin to forget that. Now, I have a lot to say about not just this judgment, but the successive judgments David Mossop made that went out of their way to deny even the smallest concessions to McBride. That will come in due course. I will also have a lot to say about all the wicked demon lawyers who made their living for the past few years trying to put a good man, a man that is far more impressive and honourable than themselves, in jail. But first I have to say, what does it serve putting McBride in jail? Put aside any legal, ethical or moral questions. They've already been comprehensively addressed by McBride's lawyers, despite them being deprived of key evidence by both Oz government spooks and our national broadcaster, the ABC, who abandoned McBride in his time of need. Forget all that legal shit. Forget even the question about duty for now. Just mull on this. A man who the overwhelming majority of Australians think should never have been prosecuted is now going to jail for 5 years and 8 months. That is a much longer sentence than anyone, even I think the government expected. The same government that, whilst going on and on about how prosecution should be at arm's length, was instructing prosecution to push for jail time. This is dangerous for democracy. And I'm not even going into the chilling effect it'll have on future whistleblowers. Like, just think about it this way. In the wake of all the crazy shit COVID brought out in everyone, in a time when social cohesion and trust in government is at record lows, when it seems like every second person you meet has a martyr complex, this is very bad for perceptions and the political enfranchisement of Australians, throwing a man who most Australians think is a hero in jail. I know McBride's case might seem like a small Canberra elite issue. It's not. Videos of him are reaching millions. Articles about him are the most commonly read on any given day. The Australian government would be very, very foolish to underestimate the mimetic power of the fact that the only soldier going to prison for their conduct related to the Afghanistan war is a war crimes whistleblower. The decent people in Australia's government and bureaucracy should be just as gravely concerned about the burgeoning distrust of government in Australia. They need to reckon with the growing inability of the professional managerial class to act in accordance with the views of the majority of Australians. No one encapsulates that divide more so than Justice David Mossop in his McBride judgment. If the power of the international intelligence community continues to subvert this centuries-old and fairly simple concepts like open justice in Australia, it won't just be McBride who pays the price. It'll be all of us. I mean, do we really want to end up with a political system that resembles the US? This is a really big turning point for Australia. No one cares about your stupid e-safety commissioner shit, Albo. No one cares about your manufactured culture war crises. You're degrading democracy with this bizarre info-paternalism. But you can never build trust or faith in institutions by incompetently preventing Australians from knowing the truth, or by following the US model of Democrats propping up culture war crap. The government has no ability to address them in the first place, and then grandstanding on them and pretending the government can solve it? People can see through this shit. And eventually, you will end up looking like ScoMo, continually demonstrating your contempt for normal Australians, as if they're too stupid to comprehend the basics of government. Instead, have the tiniest bit of courage. Start following the majority opinion a little bit more. This could have been a non-issue. McBride's prosecutions could have been dropped in an instant. Instead, David McBride will be an albatross around the necks of Canberra's institutions for a very long time. He is now a symbol of the disconnect between Australia's political class and the views of normal Australians. I'll have a longer video on McBride's sentence and the judgment very soon, and I would organise some sort of student protest to free McBride. But I keep getting accused of being racist towards Canberrans for my slogan, "From Lake Burley Griffin to the headquarters of the AFP, David McBride will be free." We've been making videos about McBride for over 3 years now. I get that it's an old trope, but I think it is because it is the most visible example of the tentacles of the American deep state strangling our nation's institutions. And to McBride, I know you can't see this video from jail, but for the love of God, somebody put it on a USB and smuggle it up their ass so they could show him. 5 years and 8 months might seem like a long time, but don't worry, it's nowhere near as long of a time as eternity, which is exactly how long Justice David Mossop and Prosecutor Patricia McDonald will be spending in hell.